today was, thank you for recording, um, just to talk about the draft legislation that got been worked on it after our meeting on Friday. Uh, um, that was circulated about 20 minutes ago. It is the plain vanilla. It does accomplish what we're mandated to accomplish. So I thought if Ben and Natasha could just lead us through, walk us through the amendment, the proposed charter amendment, and then see where we are. If there's questions or any discussion of any challenges, we could have that discussion afterwards. But it's pretty straightforward. Okay, let me shift it over to Ben and Natasha just to walk us through the draft.
Natasha,
Sure.
I'll let you
And
go ahead.
Ben, is it easier for me to share the draft on screen, or would you like me to shift the hosting capabilities to you?
No, you're welcome to. I was just pulling it up. I, for whatever reason, wasn't on that email circulating it earlier, which I have other access to it, but
All right, I'll share screen.
great. Thank you.
So while she's pulling up her screen, I just want to remind everyone, one of our goals is to preserve and stay on track with getting this through the city council this year, through what's left of the legislative term that lets us meet the deadline. So that's why we've got a very simple charter amendment.
Okay, so what everyone should see before them right now is the very simple charter amendment that's been drafted by Ben at Department of Legislative Resources in order to, as the state bill that was passed in 2021 allowed for the transfer of the city of Baltimore from being an instrumentality of the state to an instrumentality of the city. And so the language here would accomplish that very simple piece of local control. There would then be further discussions as we continue to have guest speakers from other jurisdictions come to talk about what that would look like. So this would be a bit of a two-parter. One, for the purpose of ensuring that we're an instrumentality of the city of Baltimore. Currently, the police department is an instrumentality of the state. And then two, we would continue having the larger local control board meetings in order to establish what that model of local control would ultimately look like. And then Ben, I know you had discussed, Friday a bit about, and Elena, the charter process, but maybe it could be good just to brief refresher on the sort of timeline we're looking at for this piece.
Of course, Alina, I'll let you go ahead. Otherwise, I'm happy to jump in. You're muted if you're speaking, Alina.
Sorry about that. Ben, why don't you just go ahead, because I think you have a better sense of the dates of the meetings and that sort of thing. So
Sure. So generally speaking, a bill, and in this instance, a resolution, must be heard by the city council at least 3 times before ultimately being passed by the city council and being sent to the mayor for their signature or veto. In our circumstance, we would want to introduce a charter amendment as soon as possible. between now and the meeting on July 25th, which would be the last opportunity to pass this legislation before the August 5th deadline to submit the ballot question to the State Board of Elections, we have, let me just confirm, 1, 2, 3 meetings. 4, including the one on July 25th, provided no others are added. So we would submit this to the City Council for consideration. It would be heard potentially as early as next Tuesday. The council meeting being heard on Tuesday because Monday is a city holiday in celebration of Juneteenth. The resolution for a charter amendment would then be sent to committee for a public hearing. That would occur quickly. And then after the resolution is voted out of committee with any amendments that may be tacked on, it would then go to the floor of the council for a second reading and ultimately pass then, and then ultimately for a third reading, upon which it would then be sent to the mayor. After the mayor has executed, the actual ordinance or the resolution, excuse me, itself must then be certified, and on a parallel track, the ballot question, which would ultimately be put to the voters, must be drafted and then eventually submitted to the state board on August 5th.
Ben, as you mentioned that like the ballot question is on a separate track, that essentially, I guess a question I have would be, would that be kind of changing this language here into question form for the ballot? Or I guess what exactly would it look like on the ballot? Because if I'm understanding this correctly, what we have in front of us is what goes to the council, but there would be separate language that would then go on the ballot that I guess reflects what has gone through the council.
Correct. And Alina, I'll let you take this because I know you have drafted other questions previously. So,
Yeah, this part of it is really controlled by the election article in the state law. And this actually the city solicitor is given the obligation to write the questions for all the ballot write the forms of the question for all the things that are being submitted for approval on the ballot. So there are requirements. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but they're very minimal and easy to comply with. But we try to write them to not be too lengthy, but still get the essence of what the bill would do across to the voters. There's also there's advertising requirements as well. So all the charter amendments and bond resolutions are also published at some point prior to the general election.
I have a quick follow-up, Elena.
Sure.
Does the question have to be drafted? Like, what would that look like? I guess to go further into Natasha's question, because I feel like when we got the general obligation bond
Well, they're all
questions,
done
we got like
separately.
so would we wouldn't have any idea of what that question would be or how it would look before we move forward? Because I guess my concern is with the tight timeline that we have, amendments would definitely take more time. And so I just want to be sure that this and how it looks on the back end as encompassing as possible, because we really don't have time for amendments, you know.
Well, we can't even submit the ballot questions until the bill is passed and been signed by the mayor. So if there's amendments along the way, those are easily incorporated because if they have passed through the council and become part of the bill that goes to the mayor, then it'll be included in the consideration for the language of the ballot question.
So we're sure that this version, like this language here, is going to be is this going to be the final version of what we're going to need to pass through the council? We're not going to need any, or you don't think we'll need any amendments to this?
Amendments to, I think I might be missing your point. What are you thinking?
This language that we have in front of us now.
Right, that's just the bill itself. The ballot question tries to summarize as much as much as we can.
Yes,
the
yes,
context
yes.
of the
I
entire
get that
bill.
part. I
Yeah,
get that part.
including
I'm
any
saying-
amendments, because like I said, the bill will have been passed by the time we send the documents into the State Board of Elections with the ballot questions attached to them. So it will include, if there's a significant amendment, then it'll be included as in the question as composed by the solicitor's office.
Yes, I get that part, and my
Okay,
apologies
sorry.
if I misspoke at any point, because I think I did
Okay, sorry.
earlier. So my fault. No, it's totally my fault. I want to go back to not the question that comes out
Okay.
at the end, but just this language here, because
Okay.
it's been laid out with the proposed calendar that we would need to meet as the council for us to get it through to the mayor's office.
Okay, yes.
We are on a very, very tight timeline. And if we have to make any amendments to this language that we have here, that
Mhm.
will likely interfere with that timeline. So I'm just asking
Potentially,
you
yeah.
all.
I
I'm
mean,
asking
timeline
us
is
to-
the timeline. You have to squeeze everything in, including, any hearings on amendments. And I mean, you're going to have hearings no matter what. So,
Yes,
Um,
yes,
yes.
I gather that. I just want to know if this language is, as right now, as we stand legally, the most encompassing version that we're going to need, because I want to
Oh, yeah, I
have
see what
the
you're saying
least
now.
amount, the least
as
amount
far
of
as, yes, I
likelihood
believe it
amendments
is.
as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
For at this moment in time, it's fine.
Yeah, and I would add, Nikki, that this is up for discussion here. Of course, it would also be brought to the full committee. So I completely understand what you're saying with amendments and the short timeline. Hopefully, even though it is a short timeline, having discussions by this committee and then the full committee before it moves forward or can help inform whatever else any proposed amendments anyone would make along the way. And if it could be worked out beforehand, then we could do that as part of the will of the group.
Wonderful. That would be very helpful for me. Thank you.
So the plan is, and that this group would discuss, raise any concerns, bat it back and forth, spin it around. I think what we have is good, but if anyone has any concerns about it, let's talk about it, because we will then share it with the full board, the full local control advisory board, so that we can have a discussion about it on Friday and move forward, from there. And I know that it seems like people that wanted to get into the meeting have gotten in. I had some emails suggesting people were having trouble getting in, but it looks like a lot of people have joined. So let me ask, does anyone have any questions about the draft?
This is Andy Smolian. I have a quick
Andy.
question, not of the draft itself, but this is to the law department. And I don't know where we came down on it, but does the public local law and Title 16 still apply? I mean, like that is, once this is passed, that doesn't go away, correct?
Correct.
Okay, then I'm good.
Any questions on the schedule, the process? Hold on. Yeah, I gotta take this call, so hold on. I mean, you guys go ahead and talk.
This has been with legislative reference just for everybody's own benefit. I posted in the chat, and let me know if that's not coming through. A sample question, ballot question for Baltimore City from 2020, which was question E, which had to do with the creation of the Charter Revision Commission. In addition to that, I posted a link to all of the ballot questions from that year, and for Baltimore City, our ballot questions begin on page 8. So from the language that I posted, you can see that the ballot questions do not work for word, cite, the actual ordinance or resolution that comes out of the city council. It accurately reflects, though, what has been passed out of the council. And the language would be, again, up to the city solicitor, as Elena pointed out.
Ben, it didn't come through on my end. I'm sorry.
Okay, I will circulate it to Natasha, and hopefully maybe she can circulate that with whatever other materials do come through for the rest of the meeting. I selected all attendees. Is there a different way to send it? Or all panelists, perhaps? I'll do that as well.
It should, yeah, do all panelists, and then I will pull up the link and share screen, or there's like an ability for you to choose everyone. And then that way we could all see what a sample question looks like.
Oh, there we go. Everyone buried at the bottom. My apologies. There we go.
Okay, so for screen sharing purposes, I'm able to pull up the link for all the questions. This one is question E.
It's on page 12 of the linked PDF.
Perfect. And I will share once again. Okay. And so Ben, as you mentioned, this is the sample of a ballot question as it would go in front of the Baltimore City voters.
Correct. And then the options for the voter are, as you can see at the bottom, for the charter amendment or against the charter amendment.
And just as this is Elena, I know I mentioned that there are sort of some basic requirements in state law in the election code, and they are that it has to contain the question or letter designated for it, and it has to have the type or source of the question, like charter amendment or things like that, or bond resolution, a brief descriptive title of the question of the bill itself, and a condensed statement of the purpose of the question, and then what the voting choices are, which is all displayed probably on Ben's sample there.
Were there any general questions about the process that going through the city council? Sounds good.
A very quiet group today.
Yeah, I have a question. So we're meaning to introduce, assuming that this this committee approves it and the full committee of the full commission approves it, that it gets introduced at the meeting on the 27th.
No, we have the opportunity for it to be introduced as early as the 20, go back just to, I don't want to state the wrong day. As early as the 21st, which would be a week from
Yeah.
today.
There is a council meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
The Hopper deadline is tomorrow, but I imagine given the circumstances that perhaps the council president's office may be amenable to waiving council rules with respect to that. But given the simplicity of the bill language as it's drafted right now, I think it would be ready to submit, provided ultimately there's agreement from this board.
And I'll go back to sharing the amendment, the charter language, because I know I just let a couple of additional members in. So for those who had joined late, this was a sample of a ballot question, and shared in the email sent earlier, and what I will now share on screen is a simple simple piece of legislation in order for us to move forward with the ballot process, that would transfer the control of the city from being an instrument, the police department from being an instrumentality of the state to being an instrumentality of the city.
And Ben, when you say the board, do you mean like this subcommittee and then everyone else? Or is it just once this subcommittee approves, everyone is fine with it? I just want to be sure when I talk to the council president about introduction, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll defer to the chair on that.
Right. So this is the group that is responsible for, this is the committee that's responsible for moving the charter process forward. And so we're gonna, as a courtesy, make a recommendation to the full board that this be the language. If there's any concerns, we'd want to hear about it. The council president is a member of this committee. And we are very, very happy, Nikki, that you're here and helping us with this process. All that to say, I believe that once we have the support and the agreement of this group, this committee, we're ready to go forward. But I would want the full board to see it and have an opportunity to weigh in.
And that makes sense to me, Chief Moore. I totally and fully support that. And I guess when would we be able to get that done, since we want to try to meet our Hopper deadline?
Yeah. So
Or we
what
can-
is, may I ask, what is the Hopper deadline? I mean, what is the date? Is it Friday at?
So it's tomorrow, but we can waive it
Ah.
we can waive it as far out as Friday. So
Yeah.
I just
Okay.
want to know what you guys would like for us. If we have the opportunity to get this in front of the whole board and get their feedback, I would really like to do that before
Me too.
moving forward with introduction.
So if we can move the Hopper deadline to Friday at noon, that would be great. And we might be able to have the concurrence of the full group before then, but after today, after our meeting, after we're done with this discussion, I'm going to ask that the draft be circulated to the full board with a request that there be a quick review, and any comments or concerns be forwarded immediately and not held until Friday. And if we are able to accomplish agreement before Friday, we're good. If we're not, then we would have a full discussion on Friday at our meeting that begins at 10 a.m. Does that make sense?
Okay. No, that does.
Yeah,
And we can
okay.
definitely hold off and circle
Awesome.
back on Friday.
Great. Thank you so much. Very appreciative.
No problem.
Um, I mean, you guys know, I'm not a fan of taking up, time if we don't need it. Is there anything else that we need to hash out before we end, and start the sharing process of this draft? All right, Ben and Elena, thank you very much for your work, for getting us to this moment. We appreciate you very much.
You're
And
welcome.
yeah, thank you. And Natasha, I don't know if Adam is on, who else from your team, but let's go ahead and get this circulated to the full board, along with a request that any comment be shared immediately, so that we can address it and hopefully get approval today would be great.
Yes, so I'll send it out to everybody.
Great. Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see some of you at 3. I won't be on at 3. But obviously, totally available by email, phone, blah, blah, blah. All
Thanks,
right.
Dan.
All right.
you.
Thanks, everyone.